understands Guyana like very few people do. Roop Persaud is with us tonight. He is not only a city and state planner, but a man that supports the actual change that needs to take place in Guyana in order to make it a peaceful and prosperous nation. Uh, Mr. Prasad, you said earlier that it is the public policies as well as the constitutional policies of Guyana that make it very difficult for there to be city and state success. Can you break that out for us for those who are following along at home who don't understand? Um, they follow what's happening in Venezuela, but they weren't looking to the east and what happened with Guyana. Can you speak to that?
Yes, when Guyana got its independence, the premier, then Dr. Chadi Jagan,
Mm-hmm.
he declared himself to be a Marxist Leninist, and he declared his government to be a communist government. So, from its inception, Guyana was leaning in the wrong direction. As a result of his Marxist Leninist ideology and communist practices, many Guyanese started to migrate to the United States and to Canada in particular, and to England to a lesser extent. This does not, of course, solve the problem. Running away from a problem never solves a problem. And so the situation got worse and worse. Then we had Mr. Burnham taking over, and Mr. Burnham continued more on a socialist line, but still on the basis of communism. And so the migration continued. So therein lies the issue. Majority of Guyanese with any intellectual capacity left Guyana. And when any country pushes out its intellectual cadre,
Yeah.
that country cannot progress.
Now,
It is like trying to make bread with water only. You do need the wheat, you say.
exactly. And there are lots of people who will sit back now who will say that you stepped on my toes, that you are accusing us of not being strong enough or brilliant enough to transform Guyana into a prosperous nation. And that's not what you're saying. What you're basically saying is if you lay quicksand as cement, you will never have a firm foundation upon which to build in the beginning. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct.
Now, a lot of people in America right now are looking towards Marxism as a change. Somehow it would change the economy to make it better for the poor. It would change educational outcomes to make certain that we wouldn't have criminals. It would change the politics to make certain that those who are most disenfranchised would be represented. It has the aspirations of presenting government as a replacement for God. Uh, and so, if you could, I'm not necessarily saying warn, but if you could tell Americans what happened with Guyana when those principles and policies were introduced, first with Jordan and now with Dr. Ali, who wants to reproduce the very same strategies from the 1970s on.
Yeah, during the 1980s, folks, the citizens of Guyana had to line up days, 2, 3 days, to get a loaf of bread under the communist socialist regime. A pint of oil, gasoline. You have to know some party boss to get a job. You try to farm. They grow paddy and provisions. They were not paid by the state. The government of Guyana didn't pay the farmers for months and months. And so the whole economy ground to a halt. Production actually ceased. Human rights were denied.
Exactly.
Elections were defrauded. One person ruled as president for life. One
Yes.
party ruled for 28 years. When the next party got in after ex-president Jimmy Carter went to Guyana and declared that party the winner, not by constitution, that party ruled dictatorially again for another 23 years. And so nearly half the Guyanese people were disenfranchised. They had no voice or say in the so-called parliament.
Could you could
So
you
those who
also
are opting for this socialist communist ideology,
yes.
they are opting for shortages, loss of human rights, loss of individual rights, loss of freedom, loss of properly conducted elections. Half the nation will get representation and the other half would cease to exist.
That's what I want to talk with you about right now because 3 hours ago, Dr. Ali made a statement to the press because he was forced to. And his statement is such, and this was reported in the Jamaica Observer. He says that his government is committed to racial harmony. The ruling People's Progressive Party Civic PPP /C today said it was committed to easing racial tension in the country and appealed to citizens to do everything possible to follow its lead. Why are there racial tensions and why were they exacerbated by the election of Dr. Ali? Dr.
Well,
Persaud?
like I
Yeah.
said,
Mm-hmm.
the Constitution gives the all. Well, what's the one party forms the government? They have all the ministries under their control. They have judiciary control. They have the university under their control. They
Mm-hmm.
have the education under their. They are the country. So how can he talk about racial harmony? I mean, he can talk. Anyone can talk, but you have to have parliamentary changes, inclusivity. You have to have a change of constitution that calls for shared governance so that all the people of Guyana can participate and contribute to that shared governance for racial harmony. But when you have a skewed parliament, skewed ministries, skewed constitution, you can never have racial harmony. So it's just, I mean, the current PC is the same old PPP party which was responsible for the out migration that we had, for the racial disharmony that we had, for the same old constitution that is designed to benefit dictatorships that we have had since the 1950s. So
Exactly.
to talk about change in racial harmony begins with a change of constitution. Guyana is a failed state
Yes.
because nearly half of its people are always unrepresented in the Parliament of Guyana. So how can
Exactly.
there be any racial harmony when nearly 50% of the people have no say in the governance of the country?
Mr. Persaud, there is such unrest right now as what happened over the weekend where two young men who were protesting as part of the Afro Guyanese dominated opposition party to the Indo-based Marxist party were killed, and that information was sent out over Facebook and seen in over 1,000 posts. Apparently, he's upset and stated that the press should be working to make certain that there is racial harmony in Guyana. When a dictator says that, what exactly is he trying to say?
He's trying to say that us must carry the party line. He's informing the press that they better say what he says. But that's the fact. The press is there to report what happened. And they have reported what happened.
Exactly. Exactly. Mr. Persaud, you and those at Guyana, USA, believe that there are better options available to the people of Guyana. Robert City was with us last month talking about the options. I want to ask you, as a city and state planner, someone who has to look at everything from 30,000 feet up all the way to underground, what are some of the things that Guyana can do? First and foremost, because in its constitution, which is over 200 pages long, but only have two rights that people have there, and that one of those rights is the right to happiness. I have no idea how a government can assure that.
Exactly.
What can be done to begin the process of moving people from a Marxist, Leninist behavior to one of liberty and freedom?
Well, as I've said, first step is to get a new constitution. But the constitution must not be written by the ruling party.
Yes.
Because they're going to write the constitution in the name of rewriting a constitution, but to benefit themselves and to move the country further left. The next step is the Guyanese diaspora, the intellectuals and academicians in the Guyanese diaspora, must demand more forcefully that a new constitution is to be written by a large spectrum of Guyanese intellectuals and academicians. Failing that, as we are proposing, Guyana can very well become a territory of the United States of America. And there are many good reasons for this. One, there are nearly 300,000 Guyanese here in the USA. Some 200,000 to 250,000 are bona fide American citizens. The others are here illegally, burdening the system. They are benefiting from all these rights that Americans, in fact, that Afro-Americans have fought for and put in place in the Constitution, the amended Constitution of the United States of America. If folks are here and they have breached our border, that in itself is an illegal act.
Yes.
And then on top of that, they're benefiting from all the rights, economic, political, and judicial rights that American citizens are entitled to, not people who have breached our borders. So if we have Guyana as a territory of the United States of America, we are going to have a new constitution.
Yes.
And with a new constitution, we will guarantee liberty, freedom, the right to happiness, and a non-dictatorial constitution. In Guyana, the people do not vote for their president. They vote for a party. And the party boss decides who the president is going to be. they do not vote for their constituent representatives. They vote for a party. And the party bosses then decide who the constituent representative is going to be. And when that constituent representative, so called, gets into parliament, that individual represents the party's interests, not the people's interests. They have no interest in the people or in Guyana. All they're interested in is maintaining themselves in power and looting the treasury.
Yes. And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. There was a news story, and we will put this in the chat roll for those who have the first news story that we spoke of, and we will make sure that that's posted at TECN TV, our Facebook page. Uh, the whole idea that now that there have been murders of the opposition party, that the government is being held accountable by those outside of the U.S. who are using Facebook. So I know that this is a very big issue. Um, but there is a story of Guyana's oil bonanza and how it's becoming inflamed because of the ethnic division. Because you have that Afro Guyanese and Indo Guyanese separation, uh, you're looking at great destruction. And according to this story, and this was on Yahoo Finance, cronyism, graft, and self dealing have long made Guyana's identity riven politics a race to the bottom. Unlike Guyanese society, holds its carping political establishment to a higher bar, South America's breakout nation risks sabotaging a centuries deferred vision of creating commonwealth and democratic stability and instead enriching only the oil behemoths. There is great concern about how China is beginning to make inroads, Russia is beginning to make inroads, and that they're trying to push out mobile, which is a part of the U.S. Um, your thoughts about what's happening with the oil industry there, sir?
Well, when I attended the University of Guyana in the 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
it was already established that there is oil, crude oil, in the territory of Guyana in the offshore area. Um, but this same government that is in power
Yes.
refused to give anyone the right to explore for the oil. The last government gave ExxonMobil the right to explore and the right to extract the oil in return for its agreed upon payment. This present government was entirely against it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was in Guyana earlier this year, the newspaper Kaichor News, they sent a reporter to me to interview me, and the reporter interviewed me for about an hour and a half. And then the next 2, 3 weeks, I did not see anything in the newspaper. So I dropped into the headquarters to find out what happened to the interview and the article. And the fellow, the reporter had me waiting, waiting, waiting. Eventually, the owner of the newspaper came, and the reporter told me, ask the editor and publisher. So I asked him, and he said, well, what is your position on the oil? I said, well, when you're talking about oil, yes, there is oil 1 mile down,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to bring it up before it will have economic value. And Guyana does not have the capital, nor Guyana does not have the technology to bring up that oil for it to become an economic resource. He said, well, I will not publish our article. We want to eat our cake and have it. You guys don't want you guys to have anything.
That is absolutely preposterous. But again, it
Yes,
shows exactly how the press is a tool of the Marxist government.
right. Correct.
And no longer it has any viability of presenting honesty, including the deaths of the two young men over the weekend.
Correct.
I want to ask you here in closing, because we're going to have you and Dr. Seeley come back, because I really believe that this is one of the biggest pressing foreign policy issues up there, at least that should be considered by the Trump administration and the second administration. It's the
Absolutely, and that is why, I have been texting you and so on to get me on the show.
yes, and we need you all back because I really believe that in order for there to be a change, if you want to create 50,000 jobs for 750,000, well, 800,000 people that live in Guyana, you are really small sighted in terms of what Guyana has and what Guyana can produce in terms of agriculture, mineral resources, oil, and other services. It is such an unchallenged economy thanks to Marxism. But
Exactly.
you can quickly turn that around and make it a capitalist nation, and then you would see such tremendous economic growth. Poor people risen out of poverty into great middle class or wealth could happen. How can people become a part of Guyana USA? How can people read your stuff in the meantime as we wait for your return to our program?
Well, they can go to the website, usa.org, and they will see what we stand for. It's all written and it's in print. And and they're willing to join. There's no membership fee. We just want them to participate, to contribute, to share their views. Uh, then I'm going to set up a structure where we are going to meet formally and talk about the new constitution and talk about Guyana become a territory or a state of the United States. It is of mutual benefit to both countries.
Yes,
I don't see why we must allow both as an American citizen and a person born in Guyana, why we must allow people from Asia to come and dominate our politics and our economy, and we have our friend and neighbor here, the United States, which has always been there when Guyana needed help. It was ex-President Jimmy Carter who goes there to assuage the election results to prevent, mass, looting and killing and murdering and so on.
yes,
It is ex-President Jimmy Carter, an American president, and he went there twice. If he didn't do that, who knows if Guyana would have still existed, you know?
exactly.
So
Should
we have had an excellent relationship with Guyana, but I don't see this new government maintaining that relationship. They have already been twisting and turning to China, et cetera, et cetera. And we can't allow that. You know,
exactly. Would you
ExxonMobil should really come on board with us and let us have a democratic front. Yes.
exactly? Would you like the accomplishment of meeting with the Trump administration or Secretary of State Mike Pompeo uh, in 2021 to discuss a territory of Guyana? And would the people of
Absolutely.
Guyana be
This
open
is
to
where
that?
we are heading. Yes, we are absolutely open to that. That's where we're heading. Right?
Awesome. Awesome.
To meet with the Secretary of State, to meet with our congressmen and women, to make the case for the mutual benefit of Guyana becoming a territory or a state of the United States, see, with a new constitution, of course.
Well, I must say, Mr. Persaud, uh, Guyana makes a whole lot more sense than Greenland. So there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
God bless you. Thank you so much for being on with us here on Labor Day. But this is one of the problems with socialism, communism, Marxism in the world. They may give you a Labor Day, but you begin working the rest of your life trying to get out of it. God bless you. Thank you so much. We're going to have you all back very soon.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking with you.
Great talking with you. Guyana, USA, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you need to remember. That flag right there. That tells you everything that the men, women, and children who have basically escaped Guyana's Marxist rule over the past 3 decades. They want to go home. But they don't want to go to Guyana, the Marxist nation. They want to go home to Guyana, a territory of the U.S. where there is liberty, freedom, and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with more of the best in urban conservative talk. I happen to be Ken McClinton, president of TECN TV, and as well, ladies and gentlemen, the host of the Exceptional Conservative Show. We are a great republic. We are not a democracy. And as well, the best in urban conservative news, talk, and movies, exceptionalconservativeshow.com. Oh, you could do it a whole lot better now. TECNTV.com. We'll be right back with more of the best in urban conservative talk right after these messages. Great conversation with Mr. Persaud.
I started the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network in 2008, and we put this together for us. The concept was that if one of us armed citizens are involved in a self-defense incident, then we have a network of individuals